Hi, today we are joined with Adam Cornish from Global Travel Team. Adam, how are you today?
Yeah, very well, thanks, David. Yourself?
Good stuff. Yeah, really well. Thank you. Really well. So appreciate you spending some time with us to go through your business journey on the Spotlight series. It'd be great if we could start off with you sharing a little bit about what it is that you do
Sure.
and what services your business offers, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're a tour operator. So essentially, we design itineraries for people. We take them around different parts of the world, predominantly the UK and Ireland. They tend to be quite high-end tours, so we typically will provide, decent accommodation and then a driver guide, design an itinerary, which also includes certain activities and things. And that started just over 4 years ago now. We sort of expanded a little bit to doing some larger groups as well. But yeah, the bread and butter of what we do are taking groups of mainly North American travelers, just yeah, around the UK and Ireland and other parts of Europe as well.
Very good. Very good. So it started 4 years ago then. So that would have been, where would we have been in COVID at that point? Is it
Right in the middle of it.
right in the
Yeah,
middle of
right
it?
slap bang in the middle of it. I think
Wow.
we started the planning late 2019, and we're pretty much good to go. And then by about January, we were kind of aware of what was on the horizon. And myself and my business partner, we thought, well, you sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith and be a bit brave. And we actually felt that, the time was right to build up products and start making connections whilst the sort of travel world was sleeping, if you like. And we knew there would be that kind of revenge tourism as well. So we thought there's an opportunity there to come in as a new player and be ready for that. And late sort of 2021, we were still able to operate a couple of tours. Iceland was open, Africa
Yeah.
was open, which was obviously very helpful. And then, by about late 2021, we were getting a lot of bookings come through for 2022, and that was it really. That's sort of what got us off the ground and got us going really. So yeah, it was an interesting time. But I'm quite glad we took that leap of faith and that sort of risk to make that
I'll bet it
decision.
was an interesting time. There's not many people out there that would start a tourism company in a global pandemic.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
great foresight. Great foresight.
Well, yeah, I think it was sort of flipping it over and seeing, well, actually, there would be some companies that wouldn't survive. And sometimes with disruption in any industry, I think you can come in as a new player and try and be ready for that sort of time when things would get back to normal. And yeah, I mean, look, we're glad that it didn't drag on. It was only really a sort of, I suppose, a maximum of 18 months, which was significantly affected. But yeah, we got through it and we're going from strength to strength now, which is great.
Very good. It's a good point actually, because there's always some challenges going on in the economic world or the global world we live in and things. And it can be really hard for a lot of businesses out there, but there are also opportunities if you're willing to look
Absolutely.
for them and spot them. Yeah, very good.
Absolutely.
So you've probably picked up a lot of lessons in that short 4 years then. So what would you say your biggest learnings as business owners since
Sure.
starting?
Well, I think one of the advantages of being quite small is that you can pivot and you can adapt. And I think with COVID, especially in terms of travel, if you got your finger on the pulse, you can adapt quickly. You can create itineraries for places that are open, that are able to welcome tourists. And I think if you're a larger organization, that's a bit tricky to kind of make that decision and then put the work and the priority into that. So that was definitely a big learning. I think the other thing during COVID was that we saw, and I don't know if it's the same with other industries, but with travel in general, there's a lot more collaboration. It is quite a very supportive kind of industry in the sense people tend to help each other out, and that was great because just engaging in conversations, meeting people, even obviously it was virtual, going to virtual travel events, was actually really really powerful as well. So I think that was a big learning in that not only can you as a small business be quite adaptable and move quickly, but you can also collaborate and especially in really difficult times, find that you're sort of helping each other out. We were contacting suppliers on the ground that were struggling, but in countries that were open, we're saying, look, we can bring you clients. Just help us, design some itineraries and give us some inspiration to send people there. So, yeah, I think those were certainly two of the biggest lessons that came out of it. That's for sure.
That's a nice outlook and a nice way of looking at it, isn't it? Sort of collaborating together, working with other business, other industries, and reaching out and supporting each other is a big part of business success. Is the
Absolutely.
environment that's around you.
Yeah. Oh,
What would you
absolutely.
what would you do differently if you had the opportunity to go back? that 4 years and sort of do it all over again, is there, first of all, is there anything you do differently, or if there is, what would you do differently?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, I think one thing, and again, it was kind of touching on the collaboration thing. The theme was, we started off, we were very much almost a little bit isolated from the business community around us, and I think it took us about 6 months or so to kind of realize that, we're a little bit disconnected, and we really learned the value of connecting with local businesses and with the local enterprise as well. Not only were there support just from Oxlep, so in terms of grants and things, but also again, meeting mentors, people that could help us have really interesting conversations around things like strategy or certain areas of the business. So I think that was one big learning. I think as well, if I look back on our sort of strategy and planning, I think maybe we were a little bit broad in terms of our offering. And I think maybe if we had been a little bit more laser focused, just because we've had so much success selling the UK and Ireland to North American travelers, whereas I think initially we sort of had a very broad offering. We had itineraries in Asia, we had itineraries in South America and North America and so on. But I think if we'd have been a bit more laser focused, that might have brought us even more growth. So yeah, I mean, I think if I was to do that differently, I think we probably could have had maybe a bit more laser focused strategy. And certainly, even before we'd incorporated, when we were doing all the planning, I think we could have engaged, with the local business enterprise and local networking events just to maybe give us a bit more, maybe better steering or some more interesting kind of or more useful input perhaps. But but I think it's still, given where we've been and the situation we're in with Tourist, I'm still pretty happy with how it's gone. But yeah, you're always looking for things that you could have done better, that's for sure.
But it sounds like a real success story, and there's a couple of things I just picked up in what you just said, and we'll cover those two off in a second. If we look at the first one around being isolated and starting off in business and being disconnected, so it can be a really lonely place to be in business.
Yeah.
What you mentioned Oxlep and various other things. What advice would you give to other business owners about getting out there and getting some support, asking for help, or even just getting in touch with other people to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is knowing there is so much help out there, and owning a business, you learn very quickly there is so much to it, and you're not going to know a lot about certain functions of a business or certain aspects of it. I found, for example, LinkedIn, there's always people you can build up connections, and throughout your professional career, if you do make the effort to stay in contact with people whenever you might need a favor or need to be introduced to someone that could help, I think that's obviously a very useful tool. And again, on social media, a lot of people might say, well, you need your social media to attract clients, to get business, but sometimes it's also just for your own network as well. And if people follow you and they might see what you're doing or what you're working on, they might be able to, point you in the right direction. So yeah, I think in terms of getting help, absolutely engaging with the local business enterprise, because you just meet some like-minded people, but also those that are looking to help. And I think that's so important. And like I say, LinkedIn is such a useful tool for that as well, finding the right people, and sometimes also contributing to discussions in groups as well. Whether it's on Facebook, there might be groups around tourism and travel, for example, same with LinkedIn. Sometimes engaging in a conversation or a discussion and offering a piece of advice and getting those connections that can also be very beneficial, mutually, is also, a very powerful way, I think, of getting the right sort of support.
Yeah, great advice. Meeting with like-minded people in similar sort of industries and businesses and situations and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, my experience working with business owners, whether somebody's as established as someone like Jeff Bezos or just starting out, there's always a challenge there. There's always maybe it's a touch of imposter syndrome or lack of focus in a particular area, or
absolutely
sabotaging beliefs. Or there's always something, isn't there? So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's important to sort of know your blind spots and know your strengths and weaknesses. And I think once you realize that, you can obviously focus on, personally what you can do, what you're good at, but then realize, where you might need that additional support. And I think knowing that's obviously a really good start as well.
You also mentioned about being a bit more sort of niched, a bit more focused in terms of a core offering or offerings and things like that, rather than being too broad. Tell us a little bit more about that. Why do you think that's so important, or could have been more beneficial by doing that?
Yeah, I think you sometimes see it in a lot of industries, isn't it? It's better to sort of specialize in something rather than, to sort of cover a number of areas. And I think with us, myself and Conor have traveled a lot. We've been to a lot of parts of the world, so we were kind of quite confident of putting together itineraries in other destinations. But I think, if you've got a laser focused approach, you can often back it up with some really good data that really justifies what you're doing. If I look at the North American travel market now, it's far exceeded. North American market traveling into the UK and Ireland is far higher than what it was in 2019. So, if we'd have sort of looked at that data and said, well, we just should specialize in that, I think we could have perhaps gained even more bookings, rather than looking at or diverting attention away from the UK and looking at other destinations. So I think when you've got a laser focused strategy, I think you can really it's a lot easier to execute because you know exactly what you're trying to do, who you're trying to attract, and which destinations you're putting in. Whereas I think if you've got a slightly broader strategy of many other destinations and maybe looking at other source markets, you're probably not going to do it as well, just because you're bearing in mind we're limited with just 2 people at the moment. We have had an intern as well, but there's only so much you can do. And I think if you're just very laser focused, then you can really just essentially do it very well, rather than have sort of a broad.
Potentially, it's more attractive for the consumer as well, isn't it? Because there's a lot of information out there, but having somebody actually really focused in this particular sector that's an expert in that sector is reassuring as a consumer to be able to say,
it is. I think I think the only thing to add to that, I guess, is also if you do it well and people will travel to the UK and Ireland, they'll want to travel with you again.
Yeah.
But obviously, if they've already been, they might want to then look at other destinations. So but that's why I think initially it's still good to have that laser focus. And then when you start to get the repeat travelers, yes, you can then start to, to grow your portfolio of products. But even then, we've had travelers in the last 3 years that have been to Scotland and Ireland at least 2 or 3 times because they absolutely love it and there's so much to see there. And I think even as Brits, we didn't necessarily realize that until the pandemic, where we could only travel domestically, and suddenly we realized, you know what, there's so much to see and explore domestically. So it's a really interesting one, that.
Well, credit to you guys for being aware of that sort of stuff and actually, being aware of the target market, the focus and the strategy and stuff. It's a really impressive thing in business to be aware of sometimes what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. What about your personal time? Being in business can be a busy occupation.
It was a difficult one to sort of adapt to, really. I think the first thing you notice when you're working for yourself is actually the drive is that much more. It's just very different. And I think it's quite difficult to separate the two. I mean, I find now it's sort of knowing, well, how do I work best, essentially, and then building my day around that. And I tend to put the hours in the morning, have a bit of a break during the middle of the day to sort of do something healthy, go to the gym or run or whatever. And then again, work till quite late on in the evening, just because of the time difference, and with a lot of North American clients and business partners, it's kind of important to do that. So I do tend to spread the day out a lot more, but make sure I have a break in the middle. I think the challenge, especially working in travel, is that when you go on a personal holiday, you're not quite switched off. And I don't think anyone who owns a business can fully switch off at all. Even if I'm on a so-called break, I'm checking my emails, every half an hour to an hour and making sure I'm picking up on anything urgent. But I think for me, the big difference was, first of all, knowing when I'm going to take the laptop and when I'm not. If I'm taking the laptop, I'm basically working. If I'm not, I've made that very clear that I'm not working. I'll just pick up on anything urgent. I think that's really important to have that kind of divide. And the other thing is to sometimes get out of your normal working environment as well. I think if you're working from home a lot of the time, which I am, it can get a bit tedious. And I think if you're looking at other options to maybe work in a different environment, that can also be very productive. But I think it's, in terms of getting that divide or that balance right, I think it's just prioritizing or knowing when do you work best and building your day around that. And then, having quite a clear boundary in terms of when I'm working and when I'm not. And obviously with travel, and for example, holidays, that can get very murky, if you like.
Yeah, good words of advice there. The clear boundaries, making sure you're present where you're supposed to be present, but also recognizing where you're at your best. And that work-life integration these days, rather than sort of like separating, that's my work day and this is my, absolutely. And what about things like the fundamentals of running business, like financial management? What sort of advice would you give to new business owners, for example, around financial management?
I mean, because I think it can be quite daunting, and I think everyone's got varying levels of sort of financial management when they're setting up a business. I mean, for me, again, it goes back to just finding the right support and help. I think, you're also going to get a lot of different opinions and different advice, and what is the best way. And I think it's sort of knowing, well, what you're looking to achieve out of your business and what bits of advice can you adapt, because there's never going to be one sort of this model will work for you kind of thing. But I think if you look at getting different advice, different opinions from experts, and seeing what might work and what might be best adapted to your business, I suppose. So yeah, I think it's a case of just not being too overwhelmed by it, but still getting the right kind of, or getting different perspectives, different support, again, whether it's through local business enterprises, local business networks, and having those conversations. But it's so important still, I think, to have a fairly robust plan and a structure. And yes, by all means, you can pivot on it slightly, or adjust it slightly. But I think if you're pretty clear in your plan and execution, then the financial management should be a lot easier, because you've done your forecasting or your expected incomes, you understand seasonality and cash flow and your outgoings and things. So yeah, I think it's just a case of, again, getting different advice and or different ideas, and knowing your business well, and then adapting and kind of finding that kind of happy medium, if you like.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a well structured plan, a well structured strategy, and then incorporating that financial management and information helps you make those decisions based on data and information, as opposed to
Yeah, it,
assumptions.
it 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 definitely is so important. I mean, I was quite fortunate to have worked, managed P&Ls in the past, so it
Yeah,
wasn't too big a step. Obviously, it's different doing it for myself rather than for someone else. But I appreciate that a lot of people might have a really great idea or a great product, but not have the knowledge to do that. And that's where I think it's so important to get that advice and
yeah.
yeah, get that kind of help.
Yeah, it can really help a business grow. And it can be a daunting thing, can't it? It's like, say, P&L balance sheets and things like that.
Yeah,
But having access to the information to make informed decisions can be really
yeah,
empowering.
absolutely.
Very good. I mean, that's a really exciting backstory. starting a business in a global pandemic in the travel
Yeah.
industry, spotting the opportunity, coming out of the gates, clearly sort of running with a well-oiled, well-structured plan, and building a well-oiled machine. Where do you see yourself in the business in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time, and obviously touched with there's no major disruption, no other pandemics or volcanoes going off in Iceland or anything like that. But I think, realistically in 5 years, it'd be really nice to be established another source market. And obviously we're really keen to give the UK travel market a really good go, just because we've still got quite a diverse portfolio of destinations. I'd like to see us have a small but significant team, maybe between sort of 3 and 5 people, have our own office. And the dream, even within 5 years, would be to have an office where we could also have walk-ins or appointments where people could have their own, itinerary or trip, designed for them. I think that would be magnificent. And I think if we keep going the way we are, I think that's very achievable. So that's really where I'd like us to be. Like I said, be more established in other source market. Obviously, we're very established now in North America, but the UK market's right on our doorstep, and we offer a number of destinations which we know are very popular as outbound destinations for UK travellers. So that's definitely a big one. And like I say, just to have a team that's growing and potentially able to have those walking meetings, I think would be phenomenal. And I think it is achievable within the next 5 years.
Very exciting, and yeah, I've got no doubt that you'll get there, if not exceed your targets and get there
Hopefully.
earlier.
Yeah, hopefully.
Adam, thank you very much. There's always one last question that I ask, which is the one that I've missed. So, what question should I have asked you that I haven't, if any?
I think it was around the sort of team environment, or if you had a team, I think
Yeah.
it would be around what you sort of look for in terms of working environment and team. I think is that right?
Yeah. So what are you looking for from a team as you're growing it? What's your
So I think there's a couple of things. I think first of all, to have a really innovative environment is very important. And the way to sort of nurture that or develop that is to because it's just something I've had working at Expedia, where obviously there was a lot of amazing people in product there, and I think it was to have get people not just thinking of ideas, but how do you structure it? Do you look at have a hypothesis, and things like an observation, and then the impact, measure the ROI, and also the effort and things like that. I think if you've got an environment where people start to have that, can take those things into consideration when they've got an idea, you can really develop ideas very quickly, but also make sure that it's feasible, and you can put it into a roadmap, and you can really grow your products very, very quickly. So I think having an innovative culture is really important. But I also really believe in empowering your team to develop and grow their skill set, whether it's sharing ideas, whether it's going on courses. I think if you've got a team that's constantly, improving, that's not just, your colleagues, but yourself as well. If you're looking to improve, I think you'll find that your output increases dramatically because your skills are constantly improving, you're sharing knowledge, you're sharing learnings. So yeah, I think an innovative culture is really important, and then empowering people to grow and develop as well. I think it's such a great culture to be in, because I think it also, it makes people want to be there, makes people want to stay, because they feel like they are growing, they're gaining so much knowledge and learnings. But that kind of environment combined can be really, really productive, and I think that's something that I sort of really look to achieve when building a team.
Yeah, creating an environment where people feel safe and comfortable to come up with ideas and follow it through. In Action Coach, we've got a couple of things where we're sort of 100% inclusion. So it's
Okay.
including, and then a
Yeah.
support risk taking. So supporting that sort of, right, let's
Fantastic.
try something a bit different. Let's take a
Yeah.
considered and controlled risks as opposed to reckless risks, but
Sure. Yeah.
sort of build that team that have got a bit empowerment, bit of
Yeah.
responsibility for the actions and things.
Fantastic.
Really
Yeah.
good. Well, fantastic. Look, I really appreciate you coming on to the Business Spotlight. It's been really interesting to hear about your journey. I am absolutely convinced that you're going to have an exciting few years ahead of you. Adam, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on, and great to speak with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.